Hello, I'm Meg Powden, Superintendent of Rivers Supervisory Union, and joining me today is our business manager, Cheryl Hammond. On behalf of the Rivers Supervisory Union, we welcome you to this program and are glad you're joining us today to learn about our budgets. And to begin with, I want to have some time for us to really talk about budgets and how during each year, academic year, it's that whole budget development is a really intense time. And I know this is your second year as our business manager. Certainly you've worked several years for the Supervisory Union. I'm just wondering, Cheryl, about the past 2 years. How has this process gone for you?
It's definitely been a learning curve. Some parts of it are easier. Some parts of it are a little bit harder just because understanding how all the parts go together. Everything is interconnected, the information, how you receive it and where it goes once you receive it. So that's been not a challenge, but definitely something I've been learning over the last year. So third year's a charm, right?
There you go.
I'll know it all.
Well, I know you've worked very hard on these budgets, and
thank you.
I'm grateful for your work. So we're going to start our PowerPoint and begin talking about how we develop our budgets. What's the process? Would you like to lead us through that, Cheryl?
So typically in the fall, we start with the service plan, which is the development of our special ed budget. And that's taking like a really deep look at special ed, each of our kids, the services that they receive, and what they're going to need for a year down the road, which is, it's hard. It's hard because things change quickly. So as soon as you think you've got it, then someone new comes in or somebody leaves and it changes everything. But that's really our starting point because we use that to build our budgets off of it when we do that.
And this year, we have two districts now. We have the Green Mountain Unified School District and the Ludlow-Mount Holly Unified Union School District. Previously, before Act 46, we were a relatively new supervisory union with two supervisory unions coming together with 10 districts. And through that Act 46 process, we now have two districts. And so you create three budgets, essentially, one for each district, and then the supervisory union. And this year, the Green Mountain Board decided that they wanted to all serve on the Finance Committee. And it was really great that they made that choice because they started early and they really talked about what they wanted to see happen for our students, what programming they wanted to make sure was available to them. And then Ludlow-Mount Holly District Board primarily worked right in the school, in the regularly scheduled meetings, and then we had that one special meeting in January for them to get to that point where they were ready to approve the budget. Yeah, but this is very complex and very time-consuming.
A lot of moving
Yeah,
parts.
yeah. So first, we want to talk about our mandatory expenses. Do you want to start off with what's happened? Especially this year, there's been some changes.
Right, there's been a change to our health care and the way that it's going to be administered. We're going to be with the same health insurance company, but the state there's a statewide plan now for school districts. That actually doesn't take effect until January of 2021, but from a budgeting standpoint, we have to take all that into consideration. And unfortunately, they didn't tell us until mid-December what that was going to be. So
you'd already had initial budgets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the changes that they made do have a huge impact on our budget. The way that we had done it in the past and offered HSAs, which are health savings accounts, as opposed to HRAs. The HSA actually was a benefit to the budgets in the district and employees like that. But they've changed that. So in addition to that, there was a 12.9% increase in the premium. And last year it was a 12.8. So that's really, health insurance has really been a hard hit for us over the last couple of years with the budget. So the cost increase to our budget is $127,000. the liability, which means what we might be responsible for if everybody kind of maxed out their health insurance, increased by $181,000. So they're big numbers there.
Yeah.
The total dollar increase is $276,000, and but that's shared. It's not one district taking on that expense. It's both districts and the supervisory union. So everybody gets a little piece of it, but it impacts all budgets greatly with that this year.
So saying that, let's get into our budgets. We'll start with Ludlow-Mount Holly, and some highlights that we want to inform our residents of is that the Ludlow Elementary School will have a guidance counselor that goes from 0.75, three-quarter time, to full-time, which will be great for our students and our school. And then Mount Holly School will be adding a school-based clinician for 1 day a week. So that's really great that we've been able to add that position and increase one position. And then regarding transportation, with the closure of Black River, we knew that the busing wouldn't happen any longer through the municipal system. Right. And so the board needed to think about what are the next steps. And we've gone back and forth on this some.
Yeah, we have. Just a little.
However, last night the board made a decision. So do you want to talk about that, Cheryl?
Ultimately, we had two options on our table. The town of Ludlow was willing to lease us a bus for our use, and then the other option would be to purchase our own bus. And it kind of came down to weighing out some pros and cons. Even if we leased the bus, we would have to convert it to a school bus by law, and so that's a great deal of money to a bus that we don't own.
Yeah, I remember. Was it about $9,500 that it would take?
Somewhere between $7,250 and just over $9,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so,
okay.
Yeah, still a lot of money.
Right.
To pay in a bus.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more conversion, I think, that we're going to go on it. So, so ultimately, the board decided that they would purchase a new bus. We would have reduced maintenance costs over the next few years, and that would solve a long-term problem. Or if we lease the bus, it would really be short-term, and we'd have to start looking to what we were going to do next.
And one aspect that I've been thinking about is with the district, we now have, already we have a bus in Mount Holly and a driver, and now we'll have a new bus and hire a driver. So that'll be great to have a new bus, and then we know one bus that's a little bit, somewhat older.
5 years old.
5 years older, and so we know we'll eventually have to replace that.
So we can get on a cycle and not have to replace them both at the same time.
Right, right. Also, we have a new twist at Ludlow-Mount Holly. With the closing of Black River, we will be providing tuition to our middle school and high school students. And our students can attend any public high school or secondary school or an approved independent school. So that was new in the budgeting process, to think about all our students and come up with an average tuition to put in the budget. Where did you land on that as far as the
tuitions range anywhere from $15,500 to I think 18,000 is the highest one. Some of the independent schools are more, but we pay that state high school average tuition for those places. But it's still a challenge because the students haven't really decided yet, and it's a tough time for them.
Some of them haven't. We've gotten some.
We've got a lot.
We've got a lot.
Yeah.
So
but one thing I would like to say that I think is kind of been a question for people is that the students that are 7 through 12 in Ludlow-Mount Holly, we're still responsible for them. Even though we don't have the high school in town, we are responsible for their education, their special ed needs and whatnot. And so that is part of our budget as well.
Yes. Yeah. So moving on from that, we want to talk about Black River. And just, I'm sure everybody is aware that unfortunately we will be closing our middle high school. That is near and dear to many of the hearts in this community, or in our communities. And so one of the reasons was that it became just too expensive for us to operate. And it was also agreed when the district came together that that the school would close. We have declining enrollment, and there were many factors that led to that decision. So just to give an overview, we have certain expenses that we currently use.
Right. So in the current budget, we have $2,555,113 that is specific to Black River High School. We estimate with the closing and the paying out the tuition and the tech that we still have to pay, that we're saving about $392,000. It doesn't sound like a lot of money. I think it's a little less than what was projected in the Act 46 Articles of Agreement. We did kind of go back and look at the why to that. And one of the big whys comes back to the increased cost in our healthcare and salaries and stuff like that. That wasn't really kind of taken into account when they looked at long-term. They kind of looked at it in the year in which they did the study.
Right, it was 2018, I think, right?
Yeah.
The study was done, and here we are, 2 years out, and the health insurances, in particular, the health insurance rates have skyrocketed and really impacted our budgets.
It's been huge.
Yeah.
It's been huge. If Black River were to stay open, there would be additional cost associated with it because the health and dental has gone up, salaries would go up. We'd have transportation to the tech centers. Also, our co-curricular, the sports teams, they travel. Half their games are away, and so that adds cost to the budget as well.
We were able to make some reductions, though. We had many items that we wanted to bring into our schools, or many programs and personnel for our students, and we had to make some decisions just because of the budget and the expenses. So with the closure of Black River, our teachers and staff will be transitioning to either retiring or another position. And I'll just, as an aside, mention that they have just been fantastic. They have kept the students at the forefront of their thinking and really helping our students with their transitions while they're having to transition at the same time. So I really want to give them a shout out for their professionalism. In addition to those teachers and staff members, we have 2 custodian positions that we'll be cutting, and a technology position. And then with the closure of Black River and the reductions, our budget is actually down 1.25%. However, our revenue has decreased at the same time.
Right. And so what ends up happening, well, maybe I should wait till the next page when we talk about the general state support grant.
Sure.
So you see that the budget's decreased $92,000 or 1.25%. So what happens with our budget is that we take all the revenue that we have from food service or building use or I'm trying to think what else we get for money, transportation aid. Well, that comes out of TRSU, never mind. But all those revenues that come in outside of the tax money. So we take what our budget is, subtract all those revenues out that we have. Small schools grant, that's what I was trying to think, the merger grant.
Sure.
And what ends up is your general state support grant. We have it identified as GSSG here. And that is the money that needs to be raised by taxes. So that has gone up because things like our revenue for our hot lunch is less because we don't have the high school. Our reimbursement for special ed is less because we don't have the high school. Tuition. We had tuition kids. We don't have that anymore. So all those, things come together and they impacted. So that's why the general state support grant is up, and the tax rate is up slightly as well from that.
Many factors contributed to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. However, we do have a projected tax rate. Oh, before we go into that, though, how about if we mention, because this is the good news, right, is we kept our expenses under the excess spending threshold.
Right. So we're not penalized.
So we're not going to be penalized. We are projecting a tax rate of $1.72, and that's including the 4 cents incentive that we receive as a result of merging our districts together. And this does not include the common level of appraisal numbers at this time.
So just to clarify, that $1.72 does not include, we should correct our slide, that does not include the 4 cents.
Oh, it doesn't? Okay,
Yep, so
our
we're a little
error.
better. Yep.
So it's actually with the 4 cents incentive, it would be $1.68.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
that's
Sorry,
even better news.
We missed that.
Okay, that's even better news. Thank you for catching that, Cheryl. Then we'll move on to the Green Mountain budget. One of the things the board decided to do is to go on retreat last fall to really take the time about thinking about how to get to that point of having a school of excellence. What are the programs we need to be thinking about that we can provide for our current students and also attract new students? Right. And so they took quite a bit of time on this, and we had a consultant helping us with it. And they came up with 3 priorities. Their priorities are basic skills and early literacy, adding a world language teacher at the elementary level, and then investing in STEAM programming. So that's great for our students that we have some of those priorities. We were able to meet some of those priorities.
Correct,
One
yeah.
we had to delay for a year, which we can get into later. So here we can talk about some of the positions that are being added. We will be adding a full-time STEM teacher to Green Mountain. We currently have a half-time social studies teacher that we want to increase to 1.0, and also add a guidance counselor at Green Mountain. And this brings me to the point of where I want to talk a little bit more about Ludlow-Mount Holly and the school choice for our secondary students. In the fall, we sent out we sent out a request and forms to all of our families in Ludlow-Mount Holly, asking them to fill out the form, which verifies residency and gives us the school choice that our students are thinking about. Of course, if they change their mind, that's fine, but we really need to know where our students are going. So at this point, we've heard back from 96 families, which is a good start. However, we still have about 35 families that we need to hear from. So I would just encourage those families to please get that paperwork in. And because we want to make sure we have them all set to transition to their new schools. Then getting back to other positions that we're adding, at Chester Andover, we'll be adding an elementary teacher, and this is primarily, she'll be teaching at kindergarten through 3rd grade, and this is really addressing that early literacy and trying to make sure we have as many people as we can instructing our students to become strong readers. Because we know if they're strong readers, they develop the fluency, and then everything else they can learn and achieve at high levels. So that's very important. And then we've also increased our STEAM coordinator. Lisa Holderness is our STEAM coordinator for the Green Mountain District. She's currently at 0.4, and she works for us for 2 days a week, and she's been doing a great job in elementary schools and our after-school program. And so the board has increased her time to a half-time position. Do you want to get into the numbers of the budget there, Cheryl?
We can. So the Green Mountain budget has gone up 9% 9.06%, which is $1,428,610. And that is largely due to those positions that we've increased. The other factor is the health insurance. I mean, hate to beat the health insurance up, but it really comes back to a lot of that. The General State Support Grant is up 3.37%, and their cost per pupil is $16,021.81. Their equalized pupil actually went down substantially. That last year they were at 721.46, excuse me, and they're down to 706, and that's due to the shifting of kids and the weighting factors that they do, and poverty levels, and English as a second language, and all that comes into play, and declining enrollment is the other piece of that comes into play. But that has a direct impact on our cost per pupil and our tax rate.
And so there's this formula that the Agency of Education uses, and then is it the equalized pupil number that we have to wait on? It seems like there's a number that, makes it hard every year for us to have firm numbers. I think it comes out in December. Am I?
Yes, they do. I think they're supposed to give us a final number by December 15th, but the last 2 years that has not happened.
Right.
They got a new system to try to make all this data come together and make magic, and it's really slowed them down.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
So hopefully they'll kind of figure out what the hiccup is, and we can get that information a little earlier.
So we're in alignment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to share some additional information about our Green Mountain budget, with the addition of the projected Ludlow and Mount Holly students who will be joining us at Green Mountain, we'll have a revenue of $935,000. Of course, we're hoping we'll receive more students after all those families figure it out and get those forms in. And also, we had an unfortunate situation just before the school year last year where Chester Andover experienced a very significant flood that caused quite a bit of damage, and that contributed to our deficit, and that was about $149,500.
The deficit was.
Yeah. So those were factors in the
absolutely.
budgeting.
Absolutely.
Good news with the revenue, not so good with the deficit.
Yeah.
So moving on to Rivers Supervisory Union, one of the things that I'm struck by when we have all these meetings with our boards is that many times people who come to the meetings or talk with us assume the Two Rivers Supervisory Union is all about the central office where we work. And actually, it involves 4 different budgets that you work with. Do you want to talk about those some?
So we have the central office, which is for the superintendent's office, the business office, curriculum development, director of technology, and that makes up the central office budget. Special ed, state mandate, it's in the central office. And then transportation, which is probably last couple of years, wasn't it? Maybe 3 years ago they mandated it to come in. And so the other piece of that is all the grants that we have. We have the Consolidated Federal Grant, we have IDEA B, we have the 21st Century Grant, which a lot of people know is the after-school program. That's what funds that. And then we have a lot of other smaller grants that go with it, but those are the major federal funds that we work with. And so when you look at the budget for the SU, and it's $6 million, it's not the supervised. It's not just the central office. It's special ed and transportation and all these grants, which I think people don't understand always. So all these budgets are assessed back to the school because the supervisory union doesn't generate any money, so they are supported by the school budgets. And each budget is divided differently, assessed differently, I guess is the word. The central office is based on the equalized pupil And so we take those numbers and we take the budget and we literally split it out based on the percentages of those equalized students. For special ed, it's based on child count. This is a report that we have to do annually on December 1st for all of our students that are receiving special ed services. And we take those numbers and, again, put the districts together because we have it by school, so we have to add it back together. But then we divide it back by district as well. Transportation, currently because of us running our own systems, that is actually built back based on actual cost to each district. So one of the things we hear all the time is that people don't get to have input on the TRSU budget. People are always welcome to come to our meetings, and we actually have had quite a few people at the TRSU meetings.
Yeah, it's increased.
It is. The public actually gets to end up voting on our budget as a piece of each of the district budgets that they do. It's not a direct vote, but they certainly could come and give their input at any time that they would like.
And our board certainly, the two Rivers Supervisory Union board certainly looks very closely at the budget and asks us to think differently about certain aspects of the budget, whether it's our priorities. And in particular, I remember this year we brought in 4 priorities that we had for the whole supervisory union because we always want to serve our schools well. And unfortunately, we weren't able to bring any of those priorities in this year, but we'll keep working at it, right? So with the challenges that happened with our budgeting season, we decided that at TRSU that we would make some reductions. And you had a recently new position this year with a half-time data specialist, and we have decided that we will cut that position. And also, again, to save money, we have what's called the Roost building, where we have 4 of our employees, and the conference room is located behind our main office building. And we have decided to not occupy that building anymore. So our folks are going to have to find spaces in our schools, and our principals have been very gracious in welcoming us and looking for space for those folks. But it will save us some significant money. And then we've cut professional development, mileage, supplies, and equipment, and a Medicaid clerk. This year, Cheryl, you and our Director of Student Services, Mary Barton, have been working on developing a new program for our students who are being educated outside of the supervisory union, and we're looking to bring them home because we always want them back in our schools. And you want to talk a little bit about that?
So the cost of sending students out of district, we have to pay the tuition. We have to transport them there. Any services that they receive in addition that's of and beyond a general tuition, we get billed back for. So by bringing students back and being in the school, there's multiple benefits. There's the cost savings. I think by doing this budget, we're saving, doing this program, we're saving about $100,000 to do this. But it also gives the students a chance to be home, like Meg said, and interact and be part of the school with their peers.
And when they're able, they go into our classrooms. And we have another program for students with autism, and that we're in our 2nd year of that program. And Ludlow Elementary teachers and Karen Trimbley, our principal, have been so welcoming and of our students, and it's great to see them integrate into the school. So, in conclusion, we are asking for your vote. We would love it if you decide to vote yes on our budgets to support our students and schools. We have polling places, of course, in each of our towns, and we'll also be providing some informational hearings and the annual meeting for both districts. So you have it up on your screen, but just to emphasize it, because we'd love to see people come out, and we want to be available to answer any questions folks might have, is for Ludlow-Mount Holly, the public informational hearing and annual meeting is coming Tuesday, February 25th. On February 25th at 6:30 p.m. in Presidential Hall, which is located in Ludlow Elementary School. And then for our Green Mountain District, the public informational hearing and annual meeting will be this coming Thursday. Tomorrow's, what day are we at? We're on Thursday, okay. So it's coming Thursday, February 27th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium at Green Mountain School. So hope everyone comes out and brings their questions and their support. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us in this program to learn about our budgets and the importance of investing in our schools and the programming we want to offer our students. If you have any questions, speaking of questions, let's hold off on that. We do have 2 questions. So we received 2 questions. One from a resident of Ludlow, so it's a question pertaining to primarily Ludlow-Mount Holly. And this resident asks, what are your short-term plans for addressing the transportation issue? How about the long-term plan for transportation costs? So this really speaks to what we were talking about earlier, is that, there were some deliberations on our board, at the board level, and the board has decided to purchase a new bus. And so you'll do a bidding process.
Correct.
Right. And how does that work, Cheryl?
So I'll solicit some vendors that I know, and I'll put it out on the Vermont bid board and probably in the local paper. So hopefully we'll get at least 3 bids. And I've asked for them to come back by March 5th so that we can make a decision on March 11th at the next meeting.
Oh,
Because
great.
it takes a while to get a bus.
Right.
So
Right.
I think this is going to solve our short-term and our long-term transportation needs.
Great. And then we have another question from Green Mountain, a resident of Cavendish, asks us, the consolidation was intended to reduce education costs. How can the superintendent convince the voters to approve an education budget that has such a huge increase? So I think that's a good question. It's one that, we all struggle with, because we were anticipating more savings with our smaller districts coming into larger districts. With the first Act 46 study committee, though, I do remember Chris Adams was our director of finance at that time. I do remember us looking at, I think, up to 10 scenarios, really. And as I was researching for this question, I went and pulled out some of the information we had from that time. And if we had come together as a whole district, that would have been our most significant savings, if all of our districts had joined into one. However, we keep working at it, and we expect to continue to have long-term savings. And the reality that we're dealing with is that we have declining enrollment, and that's been going on for several years, and it's happening throughout most of the state. And then, as you mentioned earlier, our health insurance increases have been quite high over the past 3 years. In FY 2019, it was 10.1%. FY 2020, 11.8%. FY 2021, 12.9%. So in the last 3 years, our health insurance premium has gone up 34.8%.
It's a big number.
It is a big number. However, even with all these challenges with our budgeting, it's very important for us to continue to invest in programming for our students, because we want to offer them options and prepare them for what's next when they graduate. So, as I mentioned earlier, the board made that decision that they would go forward, even though, the increase is significant for the Green Mountain District. They want to invest in this programming for all of our students. And as I mentioned, we'll be adding a STEM teacher at Green Mountain, increasing social studies, and adding a guidance counselor at Green Mountain. and adding an elementary teacher at Chester Andover, and additional time for our STEAM coordinator. So it's all great if we, can have that programming for our students. That would be awesome. So just getting back to our contact information, if you have additional questions, please contact Cheryl or I. We love to talk to you about the budgets, and we are looking forward to the annual meetings and the vote, and hopes that we'll be all done. So thank you for joining us today.